Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Tea Time with Tommy, the pro wrestling podcast with Tommy, NORBZ, and me, Brittany. Cheers. I don't have my tea today. It's just watered down iced coffee, but that's okay.
Water for me.
I'm sorry I didn't bring up the tea part, Nikita. My fault.
So good.
No worries.
I always forget, Nikita. I'm so sorry.
Oh. Hey, it's all good. Iced down or watered down iced coffee. I love it.
Oh, we're the same.
Awesome.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, as you guys might have heard, we have the legendary wrestler, the Russian Nightmare, Nikita Koloff on the show.
Woo.
Formally introducing you right now, Nikita. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I need to take you on the road with me. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no
Absolutely.
problem.
Absolutely.
So to start things off, it might be a really big question, but what inspired you to become a wrestler?
I got a bit of a different story from probably many of the guys and gals who are in or have been in professional wrestling, because I didn't grow up dreaming of being a professional wrestler. My passion was American professional football, weightlifting, bodybuilding, and so that was kind of where my focus was. That was where my drive was. And I would get a random phone call from a guy named Road Warrior Animal one day that would share with me a storyline of becoming a nephew for Ivan Koloff, and that was really the introduction to the idea of me actually becoming or competing as a professional wrestler.
I love that story with how you guys went to the same high school with Road Warrior Animal, and I love those stories.
God rest his soul.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to ask you, Nikita, that nickname, the Russian Nightmare, I think one of the most coolest nicknames in pro wrestling history. How did that nickname and that persona that you were absolutely amazing at, how did that come about?
A little more backstory on that phone call from Animal. Ivan Koloff's partner was a guy named Don Kernodle. They were the NWA World Tag Team Champions, and Don was good friends with Sergeant Slaughter. And so Don and Sarge actually kind of put together the whole idea of a nephew for Ivan, to where he would become Uncle Ivan for nephew Nikita. And Don approached Animal and he actually asked this question: hey, do you know any big guys who wouldn't mind shaving their head and becoming a Russian? And Animal goes, I know the guy right now. So he made the phone call. And in turn, I called Jim Crockett Jr. of Jim Crockett Promotions and had a 5-minute conversation with him, showed up the day he said to be in Charlotte, introduced myself, and Nikita Koloff, the Russian Nightmare, is birthed and born in the hallways of Charlotte that day. And then I took about 6 months to develop the accent, to develop the character, to put a few phrases and words together, Russian words. And over the course of time, I really developed that, and to where it became known, I became known as the Russian Nightmare. And it was also a play on the name, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, because he come into the territory as the booker, and one of the first angles he did was with me, and I simply said, I thought, well, the American Dream, I'll be your worst nightmare, and that's kind of where the Russian Nightmare moniker was birthed.
Well, you mentioned Dusty Rhodes, one of your possibly greatest opponents, and you had such an illustrious career in the NWA, a storied Hall of Fame career. You feuded with some of the greatest legends of all time. Like, it's a really loaded question. If you can narrow it down, who would you consider as your greatest opponent and your greatest feud with?
It's a great question, and I'm just even as you asked the question, thinking back on some of the guys. I mean, it is in a sense, kind of a who's who of who I was in the ring with. And sometimes I actually forget who all I was in the ring with. The fans are the greatest because they remind me, like they'll post things on my Twitter or my Instagram, and they'll put pictures up there, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot I even wrestled Diamond Dallas Page, you know, or Cactus Jack, who went on to be Mankind, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, the list is endless, right? Ravishing Rick Rude, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Mark and Jay Youngblood, Wahoo McDaniel, Blackjack Mulligan. We mentioned Dusty, the Road Warriors, Rock and Roll Express, Midnight Express. I mean, just to name a few, right? But to really narrow in on your question, you are correct. It is a loaded question. It is hard to really narrow it down. But I guess a couple that come to mind, obviously, I'd be remiss not to mention, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair,
Yes.
going back to the very first ever Great American Bash when I was only 13 months in the business. And already I'm the World Tag Team Champion. I'm a World Six-Man Champion. And now I'm wrestling the Nature Boy at the first ever Great American Bash in front of 25, 30, 35,000 people. And I would go on to have dozens and really probably 100 or 200 matches against the Nature Boy. And so certainly that is memorable. But also probably the most mentioned series of matches was the best of 7 against Magnum TA for the U.S. heavyweight title when the Dirty Russian walked away with the United States heavyweight title as an insult to the Americans.
That is amazing. Wow. Story career for sure.
Wow, that's really amazing. Can you just tell us like what it was like in the ring with those memorable matches? Like we can hear like your passion of like how memorable, but like tell us what you were feeling like before and after the match.
And again, I have time now to reflect back, like right on some of those matches. And obviously, I can't remember them. I don't remember them all. I mean, to put it in perspective, in 1986, I had 454 matches in that one year. So you do the math on that, right? That's more than there's days in the year, right? So a lot of matches. But I think back. I mean, I guess the appropriate word is surreal in some cases. Like for instance, I mentioned Dusty Rhodes, right? The Tower of Power, too sweet to be tower, if you will, yeah. When Dusty and I became the superpowers. And I think about that night and how electrified the people became. Now, not when I first walked out, because they didn't know what to think. They didn't know if I was going to jump him, partner with the Horseman, or what I was going to do. But the minute I jumped on the Horseman, I mean, the place exploded and the building was electrified. And to hear him chant your name for 10 plus minutes was exhilarating, to say the least. The War Games, one other quick example, the War Games, and especially the very first War Game, because nobody knew what to anticipate. Nobody knew what it would be like because it had never been done before, to Dusty's credit. And yet, looking back on that night, again, the word electrifying fits into what the atmosphere was like in the building that night as the anticipation built through the course of the match leading into the outcome was, again, surreal.
I love that Dusty Rhodes impersonation, Nikita. Like, man, that is amazing. You have it dead on. I love it. Wow.
Well, I traveled with the man for a couple of years, and many times just him and I riding his convertible red Mercedes, and so you spend a lot of time around the man. You get to understand. You get to know the son of a plumber from Austin, Texas, if you will. Yeah.
Amazing. A man of many talents.
Tremendous.
Now, I have to ask, of course, one of the legendary wrestling promoters, Jim Crockett Jr., recently passed away. I know he meant a lot to you in your career, Nikita. Can you describe your relationship with Mr. Crockett and what what that family meant to you.
Absolute gratitude. Very, very thankful. Feel very blessed to have had the opportunity. I mean, you know, he took a chance. There's no question. Again, a little more backstory for those who don't know, or those who want, you know, we've got limited time tonight, but for those who want more of the story, the last book I wrote is really my life story, Nikita, A Tale of the Ring and Redemption. But a shorter version of that is I walked into the office that day in Charlotte, North Carolina, with no amateur wrestling background, none, zero, and no professional training. I mean, none. I had not been in a wrestling ring before. I only had a 5-minute phone call with Jim Crockett, and I showed up the day he said to be there, introduced myself. He literally puts me right on the interview set. We finish hours of interviews, and he says, be in the Dorton Arena in Raleigh tomorrow night. You're going to wrestle on television, having never been in a ring before. And so we got there late, and so I really had no time to even do anything in the ring. So they showed me some basic things in the dressing room. His only instruction to Ivan was, if he trips on the ropes, he's history. He's out of here. So,
Wow.
So in my mind, I'm thinking, going to the ring in front of a sold-out crowd, don't trip on the ropes. Don't trip on the ropes. And you might think, well, how hard can that be? But if you've never been in a professional wrestling ring, it can be real easy to trip if you've never done it. Well, fortunately, I didn't trip. He took a chance. I capitalized on the opportunity. And yes, I did run with the ball when they handed it to me. But I will forever be grateful to the Crockett family. And I'm forever loyal to the NWA, the Jim Crockett family, for giving me the opportunity I had.
Absolutely. He was a great man, and the family.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Legendary family, the Crockett family.
How would you like professional wrestling fans, especially today, to remember you by when they hear the name Nikita Koloff?
Ooh, great question. I may have to ponder that one for a moment.
Quite a loaded one.
My career, I've been noted, and I guess if some of your audience is familiar with football, they may or may not understand this analogy, but I've been noted as the Barry Sanders of professional wrestling. Or this might work, Wayne Gretzky of hockey. In other words,
Oh, yes.
in other words, I had a lot of career left in me when I walked away. I mean, I was only 33 years old. And by wrestling standards, most men and women are just hitting their prime in wrestling. But yet by choice, I walked away under my own terms. So just as unusual a way as I broke into wrestling, I made a decision to walk away from wrestling. And part of that was a goal. I wanted to leave essentially as a champion or on top of the business, the wrestling world when I left. And I think I accomplished that goal. So I hope people would remember Nikita Koloff as someone who, while he was there in a shorter career than many, gave it his all every night he was in the ring. My goal was to give people their money's worth. And when they walked away from the arena that night, they would know I gave them everything I had. I left it all in the ring. And I gave them everything I had, even to the point of developing that accent, living the character 24 hours a day for my entire career, post-career, even taking it as far as legally changing my name, that I put my heart, soul, sweat, and blood into the business. And that's what I hope people remember, about Nikita Koloff.
Yes, Nikita, I found you're also doing, which is amazing, Koloff for Christ Ministries. So you're a pastor. If you can share with the audience about that, like becoming Christian and starting this new amazing chapter in your life.
Yeah, and it's almost really kind of like wrestling, right? Like I wasn't looking for wrestling, and for those who don't know, I mean, I didn't grow up in church. And if you haven't figured out by now, fans, I also didn't grow up in Russia. Okay. So just in case you're still wondering, I did not. Okay. So Minnesota, right? But I didn't grow up in church. And after I left wrestling, you know, I was kind of reflecting on my life and what I had accomplished. You know, and I was a world champion a number of times. I traveled around the world, a number of different countries, and I'd met a Christian couple through business, and they had invited me to their church. In October 1993 is when I made that decision. 17 October 1993 is when I made that decision at these friends' church to go forward to an altar and surrender my life to Jesus. And I had an encounter that day that really changed and transformed who I was from a successful professional wrestler to now just a fulfilled individual. And little did I know, doors of opportunity would eventually open to now fast forward all these years later, 28 plus years later. I've now traveled to a total of 30 different countries. I have preached in about 1,200 plus or minus churches, do crusades and revivals and conferences. And in fact, a peer of mine, a guy by the name of the Total Package Lex Luger, we facilitate camps called Man Camp. We do one in the spring, one in the fall, and we co-facilitate these. Small groups of men come in. Like our next camp will have 35 men from 10 different states that will gather together for just a handful of days, and we're just going to pursue the heart of God. And so God's really placed men on my heart, and so we do these man camps. I do a one-day Man Up conference in local churches for the communities. Last year, I wasn't looking for this, but an opportunity opened up to launch a weekly radio show and my own podcast called the Man Up Podcast. And then the books. I never dreamed I'd be an author. And I've written 3 books. 2 of them are available on my website. And so it's just been, again, that word I mentioned earlier about the word surreal, the last 28 years have really been surreal. I mean, guys, I've spoke to an audience as few as 1. And the largest audience, actually Lex Luger and I were in Jamaica, and we shared our stories of how Christ changed our lives to an audience of over 73,000 people.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's been an amazing journey. My life is, I mean, I'm so grateful for what I get to do now from day to day, and just being with you guys and sharing some of your stuff. Now, is everybody on the panel here from Canada? Everybody?
We all are.
We are Toronto.
Oh,
Toronto, Canada.
okay. Okay, so I want to say this to you guys as well and all of your Canadian audience. In 2017, I had the opportunity of a lifetime, and I traveled to 21 cities in 21 days across Canada.
Wow.
In 4 different provinces, 5,500 miles, which I think I guess you could probably help out, but that equates to like 6,500 kilometers or something like that. All right. All in vehicles, no flying, driving. And I want to say for the record, I had never been to 19 of the 21 cities, and I absolutely fell in love with your country. And I had no idea there were that many Nikita fans in Canada. I loved it. It was amazing. And you guys have an absolutely beautiful country.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Nikita. And if you're ever in Toronto again, let's definitely meet up, and maybe we could do an interview in person.
Absolutely. We'll have to break some bread together, have a cup of watered down iced tea or iced coffee.
Coffee right here.
Absolutely. Yes.
Tim Hortons. That's our famous coffee place, Nikita. Tim Hortons.
For sure.
Yeah, I know of Tim Hortons. In fact, guess what? That's one of Lex Luger's favorite places when he was, he's from Buffalo, and they have a Tim Hortons, I think, in Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah.
He loves Tim Hortons.
Double. I'm sure Lex gets the double.
2 creams and 2 sugars. That's amazing.
And the donuts are pretty good too, by the way.
Oh, for sure.
Yes, they are.
Not that I've ever had one, but yeah.
Boston
yeah, yeah.
Pretty cool.
It's good. Well, thank you so much for like loving Canada so much. It's greatly appreciated. And we're gonna wrap up now, but there's one bonus question that I want to ask you. Do you ever wish you wrestled in WWE?
I get that question from time to time. Okay. And you know, I really, looking back at my life, you know, I'm doing my best not to live a life of any regrets. And so even, especially looking at my wrestling career, I can truthfully say I don't have any regrets. Now I look back, and because I'm asked that question, I mean, you know, back in the day, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, Bill Apter was one of the main editors. And of course, you know, a lot of the wrestling magazines really were touting Hulk Hogan against Nikita Koloff at a WrestleMania, right? And you know, I feel confident to say, if that match ever happened, or I stepped in the ring with The Rock or Shawn Michaels or any of the rest of them, you know, Macho Man, that we probably would have made some money. It probably would have drew, and we would have made some money. I also did they ever reach out to me? Well, back in the days of when there was an answering machine on your landline telephone, if they did, I missed the voicemail, right? And as far as Vince McMahon, we met one time when we were going head to head. This was before the Monday Night Wars. We met one time in Las Vegas in a gym. We just randomly bumped into each other at the gym. We had a very cordial conversation, but not one time did it ever come up, you know, would you like to go, you know, wrestle at the WWF or what's now the WWE? And so no regrets looking back. It's fun to entertain the idea, kind of like, what if? What if I had gone there? What would have happened? But as I said earlier, you know, NWA for life, NWA through and through. You know, kudos to all the success that Vince McMahon and his organization has had over the years. And so that's my answer to that question.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being on Tea Time with Tommy. Really, we had a great conversation, and we love having you here and stuff like that.
Well, I appreciate it, and I hope everyone will go. You know, to go. Hey, if you want to connect, I'll just mention this website. Last name Koloff.net. Koloff.net, and on that website you can link to the Man Up podcast. You can link and get more information on the Man Camp that Lex and I facilitate. You can go to the store and look at the books and everything I've mentioned today. Follow me on social media. All from that. That's a brand new website, Koloff.net. And I really appreciate you guys having me on tonight. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you so much, Nikita. Thank you.